November the 7th, 1969. A young nun, beloved by her students, walks out of her Baltimore apartment to buy a gift for her sister. She never comes back. Months later, her body is discovered in a remote field. But the story of Sister Cathy Cesnik isn't just a murder mystery. It's a story wrapped in abuse, cover-ups, and one of the darkest scandals to ever haunt the Catholic Church. Sister Cathy Cesnik, known simply as Sister Cathy to her students, was a 26-year-old nun and teacher at Archbishop Keough School in Baltimore. By 1969, she had temporarily left the convent, choosing instead to live in a modest apartment with another nun, Sister Helen Russell Phillips. Cathy was a vibrant, progressive teacher, encouraging girls to think independently, express themselves, and even discuss taboo subjects. On the evening of November 7, 1969, Sister Cathy drove her black 1969 Volkswagen Beetle to the Edmondson Village Shopping Center. She was planning to pick up some bread and rolls and possibly a small gift for her sister's upcoming engagement. But she never made it home. That night, Sister Helen grew concerned when Cathy hadn't returned by curfew. By midnight, Helen called two priests they know, Reverend Peter McKeown and Reverend Gerald Koob. Both arrived to help search. Eventually, they discovered Cathy's Beetle parked haphazardly near her apartment, about a block away. The car had mud on its tires and leaves inside, suggesting it had been driven through rural terrain. Inside, her perch and her purchases were missing, but a single box of bakery rolls sat on the passenger seat. Oddly, the keys were jammed between the two front seats. Police were called, but Cathy had simply vanished without a trace. Nearly 2 months later, on the 3rd of January 1970, a father and a son out hunting in Lansdowne, a remote wooded area outside Baltimore, came across a decomposed body. It was quickly identified as Sister Cathy. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered a blow to the back of her head, possibly with a blunt object such as a hammer. She had been left partially exposed in the woods, likely for the entire 2 months since her disappearance. The murder weapon was never found. Investigators initially focused on those closest to Cathy. Reverend Koob, who admitted that he and Cathy had a close emotional bond, was questioned. He denied any involvement, insisting he loved her like a sister. Police also questioned Edgar Davidson, a local man with a history of mental health struggles and erratic behavior, who was seen driving erratically the night of Cathy's disappearance. But there was never enough evidence to charge anyone. The case went cold. In the 1990s, a shocking new theory emerged. Former students from Archbishop Keough High School came forward, alleging that they had been sexually abused by Father Joseph Maskell, the school chaplain. Maskell, they claimed, had used his position to systematically abuse girls, often threatening them with dire consequences if they spoke out. One former student, known only as Jane Doe, but later identified as Jean Werner, said that in 1970, Maskell took her to view Cathy's body in the woods before it had been publicly discovered. According to Jean, Maskell wanted to scare her into silence, warning her that if she told anyone about the abuse, the same thing would happen to her. If true, this would mean that Masco had direct knowledge of the crime and possibly even involvement in Cathy's murder. The Archdiocese of Baltimore denied the claims for decades. Masco himself fled to Ireland in the mid-1990s when the abuse allegations gained traction. Although DNA was later collected from Masco's remains after his death in 2001, it did not match evidence found at the crime scene. Still, many survivors of Keogh High School remain convinced that Sister Cathy was murdered because she knew about the abuse and was preparing to expose Masco and others. In 2017, Netflix released a documentary, The Keepers, which reignited worldwide attention on Sister Cathy's case. Survivors detailed the horrific abuse they endured at Keogh and argued that Cathy's murder was a silencing tactic. The series also raised attention on police complicity, noting that Masco had close ties to law enforcement and may have used them connections to keep investigations at bay. Despite massive public outcry, no one has ever been charged. Today, Sister Cathy is remembered as not only a murder victim, but as a teacher who inspired her students and may have died trying to protect them. Her case remains officially unsolved, though survivors, journalists, and amateur investigators continue to pursue the truth. The site where her body was found is now a place of pilgrimage for those seeking justice. Rest in peace, Sister Cathy Cesnik. 9th of August 1981. In the quiet town of Harper Woods, Michigan, a Felician nun returned to her convent after visiting family. The next morning, she failed to appear for prayers. What her sisters discovered would horrify not only the convent, but the entire community. Sister Mary Ann Glinka was 37 years old and a member of the Felician Sisters, a religious order dedicated to teaching and charity. She lived at the convent attached to St. Juliana Parish in Harper Woods, quiet Detroit suburb. Mary Ann had grown up in a devout Polish Catholic family. Known for her gentle nature and devotion, she had entered religious life at a young age. To those who knew her, she embodied kindness, humility, and selflessness. She taught in local Catholic schools and was deeply respected by students and parishioners alike. Unlike Sister Cathy, who was seen as a progressive spirit, Mary Ann was more traditional. But both shared a reputation for compassion and integrity. On August 9th, 1981, Mary Ann visited her family, something she often did on weekends. She returned to the convent in the evening and was last seen alive around bedtime. Nothing seemed unusual. But the next morning, when she didn't appear for morning prayers, a daily obligation for the sisters, alarm bells went off. When fellow nuns went to her room, they found a scene of shocking violence. Mary Ann was dead. She had been stabbed repeatedly in what appeared to be a frenzied attack. The room showed signs of struggle, with items knocked over and blood evidence indicating she had fought desperately for her life. Unlike Cathy's case, this was not a quiet disappearance. This was brutal, messy, and deeply personal. Police arrived quickly. At first, they considered burglary, but nothing valuable had been stolen. There was no forced entry, suggesting Mary Ann may have known her killer or had willingly let them in. Speculation arose that the murder might have been sexually motivated. However, authorities released little information, perhaps to protect the integrity of the case, or perhaps because they had few answers. The convent community was devastated. For many parishioners, the idea that a nun could be murdered in such a savage way seemed unthinkable. Despite intense investigations, no strong suspect was ever identified. Police questioned parishioners, neighbors, and anyone connected to the convent, but the case stalled. Rumors swirled. Was it a personal grudge? Could it have been a mentally ill outsider? Or, more disturbingly, was it linked to larger problems within the church, similar to suspicions in Cathy's case? But nothing could be proven. The case went cold. Mary Ann's funeral drew hundreds of mourners. Parishioners remembered her as a devoted teacher and a spiritual guide. Her death left the Harper's Woods community shaken. Unlike urban crime stories in Detroit at the time, this case felt deeply personal, a violent striking inside the house of God. Decades later, Sister Mary Ann's case still remains unsolved, and unlike Cathy's, it has not received national media attention. But for those who knew her, the pain has never faded. Two nuns, two women of faith, two brutal and unsolved murders. In Baltimore, Sister Cathy Cesnik's death may have been tied to her knowledge of horrific abuse within the church, making her murder both a crime and a silencing. In Michigan, Sister Mary Ann Glinka's killing was sudden, savage, and seemingly without reason, a crime that left no answers, only grief. Both cases remind us of the same haunting truth. Even those who dedicate their lives to God are not shielded from human cruelty. And decades later, the questions remain. Who killed Sister Cathy? Who killed Sister Mary Ann? And how many secrets have been buried along with them? Two women of faith, two unsolved murders, and still no justice. Rest in peace, Sister Mary Ann Glinka and Sister Cathy Cesnik.